What's good, guys? We're back with another lecture with the Riptide server, and today we're going to be talking about volume imbalances. So it's a pretty weird concept. I'd say it's not really I don't use it heavily on entries, but there is a very important PD array that is introduced by volume imbalances, and also just a very important concept relating to fair value gaps. So we're going to be going over that in today's lecture. So the first thing we got to talk about is volume imbalances, what they are, how to spot it, and then we're going to move on to what concepts it introduces. So what is a volume imbalance? So it is a gap between a candlestick's bodies. So in the picture, you can see between this candle and this candle, there's a gap in the body. So that is our volume imbalance, and you mark it out with the rectangle tool. So volume imbalances show that price moved too quickly towards one direction. So like this, we dumped very fast. So we skipped over a few prices, and that just shows very aggressive displacement and very aggressive order flow to the downside. So how could we use it? I forgot to update the picture. Just ignore the picture. This is from a different video. But it introduces us to one new PD array and one new concept that are very important. The PD array we're literally going to talk about right after this. And it can be used as confirmation for very aggressive displacement. And it could also be used as a support or resistance zone for price to return to later. So kind of like any PD array, if it tags back into it, we can expect maybe price to be supported there. Alright, so here's a example on volume imbalance. So right here, as you see, we have a very big gap in between this candle's body and this candle's body. So that is our volume imbalance, and it is literally as simple as that. You just gotta find gaps in between bodies. So let's try again. Right here, we have another volume imbalance. And as you can see, it sort of worked as a support zone, going bullish for a little bit. Now let's keep looking. Here's one right here. We have a volume imbalance. And I think by now you can kind of notice they do end up getting disrespected a lot. And that is why I kind of like using them as confirmation that we're going bullish instead of just a whole PD array or entry. So like here, since for these ones we were making volume imbalances, we made a volume imbalance here. I would have maybe been like, okay, since we have two volume imbalances, this confirmed that we're going bullish. It confirms the displacement and that we're very aggressively bullish. So maybe I would have entered longs off this fair value gap, and then targeted wherever, and those two volume imbalances could have been kind of like confirmation that we're going bullish. So I'll go over one more example. So here's a good example right here. So here we have a bearish volume imbalance, and then as you see, we continue going bearish. So this could have been used as kind of confirmation, and as you see, we do kind of retrace up here. Do we tag into any? Yeah, so you could have had an entry after here, looked for whatever, maybe IFVG entry or order block or whatever, and you could have used that as confirmation that, okay, we're displacing very bearish, so I have a bearish bias on this leg. Now, there's one more thing that we need to cover when it comes to volume imbalances, and it is probably the most important thing. So the new concept that is introduced with volume imbalances is the extension volume imbalance fair value gap. I don't think it has an actual name, so I just like to call it volume imbalance fair value gap. And what this is when we form a fair value gap, but there is a volume imbalance at one of the ends. And when that happens, we want to extend from the wick to the volume imbalance. So for example here, as you see, we have this fair value gap in this picture. So we go from wick to wick for volume imbalances, right? For fair value gaps. We go wick to wick for fair value gaps. So from this wick to this wick. But when we have a volume imbalance, as shown in this picture, we extend that rectangle from the end of that wick now to the volume imbalance. And you might have seen this yourself, but there have been many times for you where you've gotten an entry or had an entry, but it didn't quite hit, and it was at a fair value gap. And rather than going into the fair value gap, maybe if you had a long wick here, it kind of stopped before going into the fair value gap itself. And this could have prevented that very easily. Having set your fair value gap at the volume imbalance instead, that can save you a lot of missed entries. So remember, if we have a volume imbalance, we need to extend it from the wick to the body instead, and only towards the way that has a volume imbalance. So like here, this bottom candle doesn't have a volume imbalance, so we don't extend it. We just keep it at the wick. But here we do, so we move it up to the body. And another thing is you may have to zoom in a lot to see volume imbalances because sometimes they're very small. So I'd say it's very insignificant if it's a small volume imbalance in between the fair value gap. So if it's very small, just don't really pay attention to it unless there's a very long wick. So for example, we did not really have a long wick here, so it wouldn't have mattered. So let's go look at some actual examples now. Okay, so here's a very good example. So right here we have this very small fair value gap. But as you see, we have a volume imbalance at the bottom of this fair value gap. So we would extend our fair value gap to here. And as you can see, we got a much better entry. So you could have entered at the consequent encroachment of this, entered into shorts, and bam, look how good your RR would have been. Just from extending that fair value gap, it would have gotten way better. So let's look for some other examples. It really happens all the time. Like, I could probably spot one. There's one here. So this one, it didn't really hold up, but this is just a good example. So as you see right here, we have this fair value gap. Now, what do you notice? First, we have a very long wick, and then also this volume imbalance right at the top. So rather than having this as our fair value gap, we'd want to extend it all the way up here. So obviously this one didn't hold, but I do see an example right here that did end up holding. Or even for here, let me do this one actually. So right here we have this fair value gap. Obviously we inverse it, but as you see, the true fair value gap would have been all the way here. And the reason it's important is because if we went off the closure here, that wasn't the true closure of this fair value gap. It was actually down here. So this would just give us way better confirmation because we would have maybe thought that, okay, we have an IFEG here, so we can go short. But if you did not wait, price could have possibly reversed still. But instead you wait until it gets closed down here, and then that would be much better confirmation of the IFEG. So let's go over one more example. Alright, so here's going to be the last example that we do. So right here, as you see, we have this fair value gap. And let's say you wanted to short off of this fair value gap entry, and maybe you just had your stop at the end of here. As you've seen, you would have got stopped out. Now, I don't know anybody who actually would enter like this. You know, usually you have your stop up here, but let's just say it does happen. So if you do zoom in, and sometimes for volume imbalances, you do have to zoom in a lot. As you see, we do have a volume imbalance, so we got to extend that all the way up there. And as you can see, the position would have held, you would have hit full TP. And I find with volume imbalances, since it is bigger, it is probably a better idea to enter at the consequent encroachment. It's like right here. And then boom. So you do get better RR. And that's about it for volume imbalances. It's a fairly easy concept. It just introduces us to this concept as well, and also one PD array, which I will make a video on literally right after this. So that's it for volume imbalances. Just a quick review. Gap between candlesticks bodies. So like for example here, but this is a new week open, so it's a very bad example actually, because that doesn't count. Yeah, so like right here, just a gap between candlesticks bodies, and we want to use it for fair value gaps, so like here. And that's about it. So I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Hope you guys enjoy your day. I'll see you later.